More information will be made available in the appropriate way and at the appropriate time.
All right, that's enough of you, Merrick Garland. So, before we dive fully into this clown and his statements here, let me show you this. As Takarta, we apply the law evenly without fear or favor. I love this cartoon. It shows, if you're just listening, this is a cartoon of Merrick Garland standing there making his speech, looking all Merrick Garlandy, with, of course, Bill Clinton with a T-shirt that says Epstein Island. We have next to him his wonderful, beautiful wife, Hillary Clinton, in the T-shirt that says Russia hoax, and her hat that says but her emails. Behind that, we got Paul Pelosi holding up a bottle of booze with his car keys, who was obviously being investigated, and I think he was just recently indicted, but for DUI. You got Nancy Pelosi next to him saying, ask me about my stock tips. And then, of course, you got a very strung out crack pipe in his mouth, Hunter Biden holding a pig without a shirt on, with what barely looks like a towel wrapped around his waist, with a piggy bank saying made in China, with a bunch of money coming out of it. And of course, the big guy himself with a little pin on his shoulder saying the big guy, President Joe Biden, right behind him in his nice little aviators, holding his son very, very, very lovingly. So that's where we're going to open up today. This was a big deal. First time in history, a former U.S. president was raided by the FBI. We say raided because that's exactly what it was. People say search. People say whatever it was. I mean, the media came out right after in the beginning. Their language was that of raid, and then once they got some negative feedback on that, they decided to scale back the rhetoric a little bit because it was a little too on the nose, I think. But essentially, you heard it right there himself. Merrick Garland personally approved the search warrant, which we have and will go over today, for the actual raid on the former president's house over in Mar-a-Lago in Florida, conducted and carried out by the FBI in secret. This was never made public until the president himself made it public via social media. And I think it was on his own personal, his social media app, The Truth. But we'll see about that. After it was made public, immediately there was a good group of folks who went down there kind of protest on his behalf. Everybody's got their Trump flags and they're doing whatnot. And immediately the corporate press decided to start reporting on the fact that, quote, armed protesters were now protesting outside of Mar-a-Lago and making a really, really big deal about this, trying to make a really, really concerted effort to paint these people in a very negative fashion. I mean, I have my own thoughts about, flag waving Trump supporters, but hey, that's for a different aside. But the raid was carried out. What day was it? It was early. Not this past week, but the week before. And again, the only reason we found out about the time was because, the president himself, former president, decided to disclose that and make it public at the time. And then next thing you know, every single media outlet was down there as quick as possible. Now, I don't want to go too far into the auspices of what their justification was, because I want to stick with the warrant itself and let that do the speaking for it. Any reporting until the warrant came out was completely nonsensical, and it was backed by a source close to the investigation, a unnamed source this and unnamed source that, somebody that familiar with the matter or familiar with the investigation. Absolutely disgraceful reporting, and it continued to evolve and change constantly because there was no true facts for these people to report other than the fact that it was happening. They had no real insider information. They couldn't get anything tangible, so they just, as the corporate press does, they just ran with it and just spun their own narrative as they went along. So we're going to start here particularly because this segment is called The Powers That Be. So right now, one of the major powers that be is the Justice Department. The Department of Justice, as a executive branch institution itself, is at the head of this thing, carried out through their arms via the FBI. Now, as it comes to obtaining a search warrant on a former president, it has to be, an affidavit has to be submitted to a federal judge who then has to approve said warrant. The warrant then apparently needs to be approved all the way up to the Attorney General, because he said he personally signed off on it, which is of no surprise to me. But the judge in this case who signed off on the warrant, particularly as it pertains to the powers that be, is a very interesting man all to himself and has a very interesting story. So I think we're going to start there. Who is this judge that signed off on the search warrant to do a once-in-a-lifetime search raid on a former president's private residence? Now, this is great. The judge who approved the FBI Mar-a-Lago search represented clients linked to Jeffrey Epstein. That is the top line. That is the headline to the story by Politico here. And then it goes through. We'll read a little bit of it. Tallahassee, Florida. The federal magistrate judge who signed off on the warrant that allowed federal agents to search former President Trump's Florida residence once drew scrutiny for switching from his job as a federal prosecutor to working as a defense attorney on behalf of individuals connected to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The judge, known for his meticulous nature, is also well respected within the Palm Beach legal community and had once worked in the Justice Department's public integrity section. He had contributed to both Democrat and Republicans. So we've switched here. First paragraph saying, okay, so he had once worked as a defense attorney on behalf of the Epstein. And then it goes, he's a meticulous guy. Trump lawyer Christina Bobb told Politico that Magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhart signed off on the warrant that the agents removed about a dozen boxes of material from the property. Bob was said to be present at the time the FBI conducted the search of Mar-a-Lago and Palm Beach. Reinhart's decision to grant the FBI's warrant request to search Trump's resort has sparked a firestorm. Republicans pounce, who have decried what they call the, quote, weaponization of the Justice Department of Justice. But one local prosecutor described Reinhart, who has been a magistrate judge since 2018, as a well-respected within the Palm Beach legal community. Reinhart is married to civic court judge Carolyn Bell, a former federal prosecutor who was appointed to the bench by then Governor Rick Scott, a Republican who is now a senator. Quote, he's a former prosecutor and defense attorney, and he's always known for being meticulous, said Palm Beach County State Attorney David Ehrenberg, a Democrat who was elected state attorney, but who also once worked for Republican Attorney General Pam Bondi. He's not going to make a snap judgment. Ehrenberg added, Reinhart could not be reached for comment. Magistrate judges are not appointed by the president, but instead are appointed by district judges. Their duties can include dealings with bond hearings, handling technical issues in civil cases, and signing off on whether to authorize a search warrant. So we're going to stop there, because the rest of this article basically just essentially goes into detail about how much respect you should have for this guy, how long a career he's had. He's a well-respected person. He's intelligent. He always does the right thing, blah, 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 blah. And then at the very, very, very end of the piece, state records show that over several elections, he donated to $4,000. Wait a minute. Where's my... Maybe I'm thinking of a different article. Oh, they got me on this one. Blacklist website. Here we go. Let's see. He worked as a federal prosecutor until January 1st, 2008, when a day later he became a defense attorney representing employees of Epstein, according to a 2018 story by the Miami Herald. According to the Herald, the employees, including pilots for Epstein, his scheduler, and a woman who had been described by some of Epstein's victims as his sex slave. I don't want to say we're talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, but it kind of sounds like we might be. Epstein committed suicide in Manhattan jail. He did not kill himself in 2019 while awaiting trial for sex trafficking. So, Judge Reinhardt, magistrate judge, not elected by the people, but appointed by a group of other judges in the district, was the one who signed off on the warrant. Now, that I think is really interesting in itself, because even Politico details the background of this judge, and particularly that of a magistrate judge, being involved in things that are, we'll say, infinitesimally smaller in when compared to, or in import as compared to signing off and approving a search warrant. First ever in history to raid a former president. A lot of times, what did it say? Involved in circuit court matters. Handling technical issues in civil cases, dealing with bond hearings. But of course, he can also authorize a search warrant for the former president of the United States, which I think is very, very interesting.
Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you